You're listening to Real Talk with DJ Ono. I'm a transfer student from Kapi'olani Community College, where I graduated with my AA in Hawaiian Studies and Liberal Arts. I also received a public health certificate from Kauai Community College. At Kapi'olani, I was a student congress president during the second year of the pandemic and worked on initiatives that ranged from creating safe spaces on campus, food insecurity, and social services. Here at UH Manoa, I'm a public health major with a focus on Hawaiian and Indigenous cultures. At KTUH, I'm serving as your general manager. On Real Talk, I'll bring you conversations about many topics that are occurring in the islands. They will range from public health and wellness, art, social justice, with our main focus always coming back to Aloha Aina. Again, I want to mahalo you so much for tuning in this hour. We have an amazing show. Our guest today is Tiffany, and we actually met in Kumu Zephani's class. She is part of the Matsunuga Peace Building initiative that's happening out of the communications department. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your scholastic journey, how you came to UH, and also how you came to Hawaii?
All right. So, hi guys. My name is Tiffany. I am actually a senior now in college at UH Manoa. And I am originally from Japan, so my first language is Japanese. Second is my English. But my dad was in the military, so that's how I got my English in from those. So being bilingual, it's very beneficial in many ways. So after some issues with my family, I moved over here in middle school, and that's where I was just born and raised, or fully raised over here in my adolescence to now. And now I'm majoring in communications.
Oh, right on.
Yes.
What was that culture shock like, or do you remember what that culture shock was like?
I just realized that it is way more diverse over here. There's a lot more diversity within the people that live over here. It's very a mixing pot with a lot of people would say. While Japanese culture, it's very much, since I was living in more of the countryside, it's mainly based like Japanese people. So for my issue was back home, it was more of like I looked completely different from many other people, so there were some issues that involved with that as well. But people treated me the same way in my American school when I was living in Japan, which was great. But coming over here, I felt more included in a sense of, since everyone is diverse, everyone has their own unique kind of characteristics, it felt much more like home to me when I came over here. Yeah.
Oh, right on. Tell us a little bit about the dish that we're going to be talking about today, and what exactly made you choose this particular dish?
So the dish that we made is tortilla de patatas. It's a Spanish dish, a European Spanish dish. So I studied abroad in Spain during my sophomore year, and for one semester. It was a really life-changing experience because I always wanted to visit Spain, specifically Sevilla, because I always see it on social media, and I was just like, oh my god, that's the place where I always wanted to be in. And to actually make that dream come true, it was really such an amazing experience. And within that 3.5 months or so when I was living in Spain, my host mom always made tortilla de patatas when I was like feeling tired, not too hungry, or like just something easy to cook up when she's not feeling the best as well too. So that made me have a lot of memories within this dish. It's kind of like a Spanish omelet where you fry up potatoes and onions and then scramble it up with an egg. It's a very simple dish, but it meant a lot to me back home. Yeah.
What inspired you? I know obviously you said you wanted to always go visit Spain.
Mm-hmm.
When you got there, like, what was that like?
It was very different from what I expected. So I know I should have done a little more research on my end, but from what I was thinking about Spain was that it would have like Mexican dishes which I thought it was going to be the exact same thing too. Like they're going to have refried beans, rice, and like tacos. Like I thought that was a genuine kind of dishes that they would have over there, but it was completely different, with the main focus being like red meat and cheese and just lots of dairy, and they use a lot of oil. So my stomach was really not prepared for that. But as far as like speaking language too, I've learned Spanish in high school and college, but it was a complete different type of words that you hear from a native speaker in Spain. So it was really interesting like way of conversating with people, because I used Mexican Spanish while they use European Spanish, which is way more different within how they speak and their pacing and then their tone within the way they communicate. So I think it was a culture shock, and it was a little more of like really difficult way of getting used to, but I actually prefer that way of speaking, which is an Andalusian language, I would say. They have more of like a faster accent, and everything is more clear and concise, but they just speak way more faster, and they kind of slur their S's. So like, for example, like for gracias, right? They put a gracias. So it's like a TH form and then the C's, which I think is way more cool in my sense compared to like other Spanish speaking languages. So that was an interesting part. But other culture shock was siestas. They take their siestas very seriously. So for siestas, which happen after you have lunch, which is the biggest part of their food eating like time, not breakfast, not dinner, which over here, like in America, dinner might be the biggest main dish that you have within the day, but that's during lunchtime. It's like a full course meal. And then after that, everyone kind of doze off. They kind of like chill with their family, sitting in the like by the couch watching TV, and then they just doze off for like 2 hours. And then I thought it was really interesting to see that, because when I went around the community just to like grocery shop or like walk around town and get into the stores, all the stores were closed during siesta time. Like they take that thing serious. So that was so interesting. It was like a pure ghost town during those moments, but I actually prefer that. Like once I start getting used to that like time frame, then I wanted that siesta time so I could go out at nighttime, because they have more of a longer night out compared to over here. So
wow.
Yeah. It's really fun.
For real. If you're just joining us right now, we're speaking with Tiffany, and we're learning about fiestas and papa frittata. When we come back, we'll learn a little bit more about this dish, and we'll talk about her host family in Spain. Keep it locked to KTUH, the only radio station that loves you. If you're just joining us right now, we're speaking with Tiffany, and we've been talking about papas frittatas and her experience of traveling and studying abroad in Spain. Tell us a little bit more about this dish, and what did you feel when we were making this dish? Because I remember when you sent it to the TikTok version to me, and I was like, wow, this is really, really interesting. And I was really taken back by a lot of people actually knew about this dish. And I was like, how did you guys even know about this? Tell us a little bit about it.
So it's been actually 2 years since I haven't cooked that dish, which is like pretty interesting, because I mean, a lot of the times the dishes that they make over there, it's kind of more on the oily sense, and coming back here, it's more of like local based dishes. And then my mom, who lives with me, grateful that she does, she cooks a lot of Japanese food, so that's how I got more used to it. So cooking that dish with you, it was actually very nostalgic in a sense, because I remember I used to cook it with my host mom all the time with her. And we even had a cooking class as part of our school program. Like we dissected into groups, and then one time we cooked authentic Spanish dish, which is tortilla de patatas, which is what we cooked, and then the next time we cooked paella. So it was like very authentic type of food, just to get more tied into our culture, or like the Spanish culture, which was so nice. So for me, it just brought me back so many memories that I had before of being in Spain. So, I mean, I still talk about it to this day of how amazing the experience was. And I still talk about it with my friends that I was there with. And we keep in contact about like, oh, I did this before this. And, you know, we just keep in contact. So that just made me realize how much more Spanish dishes I needed to cook, so I can share that with other people as well too, like you, or like my mom too, or like my friends and family back home as well. So yeah.
You reminded me of paella. Can you deconstruct what paella is for someone who has no idea or has never even seen this dish?
All right. So paella is originally from Valencia, which is more in like the beach side of Spain. They do a lot of seafood dishes. They focus more on that because it's close to the beach, which is why they just mix everything together. So the first part is they have the rice, and then they have the soup stock, and then they try to cook that like as much as you can. It's more of like a risotto in a sense. And then they put whatever kind of vegetables or meat you have at home. So it can be anything that you can put it in there, and it can be count as paella. So it's just rice on the bottom, and then lots of like different proteins and vegetables that you can put in there. And it's really interesting because depending on where you're from or where they're from, they have their own specialty with what kind of paella they cook. So paella in Valencia is more like green beans and some sort of protein, depending on which location in Valencia is. While like typical, what people would think of paella would be like a lot of seafood on there, like shrimp, and then squid on there too. That's what my host mother did. But that one is more of when a bigger family comes in, or when you want to bring it out for special occasions. So it's not like a typical kind of food dishes that you cook at home. It's more like special occasions.
That's the only paella I've ever had. So I guess I've had like the special occasions paella. So hey,
yes,
right on. I totally forgot about paella until you said it. And I mean, literally, shout out to Kike, because Kike is one of my most amazing friends, confidants, like a brother. He makes the best paella I have ever had. He does it family style on the grill, boo. Like he for real, like
I need to try that.
Well, I'll invite you to my graduation party, and I will ask him to make it just for that.
Yes.
Because no, for real, like he literally throws down this big, with charcoal, like it's a whole production, and he's like a hawk. Like he watches it, and I mean it always is phenomenal. And I cannot believe I never thought about that when we talked about this until you said it, and I was like, I totally had like a flashback, and I was like, I haven't had a paella from him in a minute, so I was like, oh,
now it's a sign.
It is totally a sign, because I'm not like, what? Tell us a little bit more about your host family, and what advice you would give to someone that's considering studying abroad.
So, it's actually kind of funny when you brought that kind of question in, because like I said before, I've always talked about my experience in while I was studying abroad, and I have influenced many of my friends that are planning to go to study abroad. So like actually 3 or 4 of my friends are studying abroad during the summer, and they're super excited about it because of how I'm hyping so much about it. But I am really excited for what they have over there, because it's life-changing experience. I think it's for any time you go studying abroad and anywhere in the world. I think over here it's really, diverse and inclusive, but it's just being in a whole different country and living there for a longer period of time is something that you learn more about the community and the culture. So I think just being more open-minded about it and just have that mindset of just trying new things is what makes studying abroad worth the experience. So I think the future advice, the advice I would give for the future experience people that want to do it is just try everything. Be open about it, ask questions, don't be afraid to do anything, because even though I had trouble speaking Spanish over there at the very beginning, they're still willing to help you out and they're very patient with that. So I think all of that is just be in the present moment, because that's what you learn a lot from, and then that's how you learn about the community as well too. And that's what I also learned about my host family. Mine was only a host mom. We didn't have a family or anything. It was just a host mom. And I remember she took care of me like her own, and she was the sweetest person ever. I already told you about this. We were so close, but she just passed away. Not just, but a year ago. And it was really hard for me because I remember she was always there for me, and she was always that hype woman that a lot of people would, want from. And even though, I was always out and enjoying the time with my friends, I still wanted to engage that kind of relationship with her, in a sense where it's just it's going to be a lifelong kind of relationship that you want to have with them. Especially she's taking care of you. I want to just at least be there and have that experience and be grateful with what I have with her. And she is that person that doesn't speak English at all. So I learned so much from her within the Spanish speaking, in a sense where I always try to use Google Translate, but it doesn't work that way. So I kind of more engaged into her conversations, and I think the most memories I have with her is the time when we were at the dinner tables, and then we were always sitting down, eating together, enjoying our time with one another, being present, which is the key factor that she always puts into, and just enjoy every simple moments. She was 70 years old, mind you, and she was always oh yeah, I'm going out with my friend, drinking cervezas, drinking beers with her friend until 11 p.m. at night, because she was living that youth life. And I thought it was so nice to see that kind of person as so lighthearted, super sweet, and very motherly and I just loved her very much, and it was a great experience. I think that just made my experience even more better, in a sense of studying abroad, because I had that person that I can always look to and can count on, and she would always be there. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like just a very unique experience in itself.
It really is. It shows you that no matter, even if you're not biological or anything, you can still feel that sense of familiarity, and you can have that connection no matter where you're from, even if you don't speak that same language, but there's that sense of that energy that ties on together, where it's just I'm taking care of you, everything's gonna be fine, just enjoy whatever you do and have fun, and that was her main message, and that was really nice. Yeah,
that's powerful.
Yes.
If you're just joining us right now, we've been talking with Tiffany. She's a senior here, graduating with a communications degree. We've been talking about paella, studying abroad.
Yeah.
And also just an amazing host mother. And that sounds just in
Yeah.
itself a big shout out to that experience.
Yes.
When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what food means to her and making connections with food during conflict. Keep it locked to KTUH, the only radio station that loves you. Aloha no. Again, I want to mahalo you so much for tuning in today. Our guest is Tiffany. She's a senior graduating this semester with a communications degree. And we've been talking about study abroad, papas de fritatas, as well as an amazing host experience studying abroad. Now that we've learned a little bit more about your experience with these dishes, has your relationship with food or how you see food changed? And what I mean by that is, like, I've met people who see food as an ends to a means, and so they only eat food because they need it for the energy purposes. You know, in our last segment we talked about being present when you're sharing that experience.
Right.
What does food mean to you?
I think food can mean many different ways, right? Food is a source of energy, which a lot of people would say, like, that's how it builds you, right? It affects you in many different ways, emotionally and physically. But I think you also need to understand that it's a communal type of experience. So food is very different depending on every different countries you go to. Like, for example, like Japanese food, Italian food, Mexican food, like everything it has history behind it. So a lot of people, I think it's just in an American industry though, where we just tend to like watch TV shows while we're eating food, which is great too, or like we're working on something while we're eating, and then we don't really appreciate what's going inside our bodies in a sense, which sometimes it's great, but I think you also need to see that part of being a food as part of an energy resource, but also a sharing experience with everyone. Because I think a lot of memories that you can build is from cooking with one another or like eating together. And then that's when you have your deepest conversations and then get to know one another, like, you know? So it's part of an activity where people can talk about themselves, be more raw, be more authentic. And I think that just adds more flavor into what you put inside your body. So I think food is just in many different forms a way of beauty, of sharing experiences together, but also understanding that it's also your source that you put inside your body too.
That's so true, because, you know, we're doing this and you made me think of two things. One, you made me think of my ex, which was a great experience. He was Japanese.
Right.
And so growing up, I was Hanaida as a baby. So I was adopted. And
right.
So the very first person who ever took care of me, I grew up eating basmati rice. So basmati rice, if you're not familiar with that, is a longer grain rice.
Okay.
Definitely does not taste like sushi rice. I bring this story up because through my ex, I learned about sushi rice. I've learned about all kinds of rice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I remember, you may be familiar with arroz con leche.
Mm-hmm.
So arroz con leche, I remember the very first time I made that for him. He was like, this is good. But he's like, this is a crime. And
I agree for some parts too, because my host mom made that for me as well too, but I was just like, this is not a typical way of cooking rice.
Yeah. And I love that.
Yeah. So it was like really interesting though, right? But like, yeah, going back to your story.
No, I mean, because it's true. It's so true. It's like your perspective is very different of how you come into that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you made me think about going back to my parents. My mother was a homemaker, and so I grew up having meals with my parents every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were each other's company.
Mm-hmm.
And so you made me think about our taco night, where my mom would literally get a big block of cheese and she would hand grate it and she would hand fry each tortilla, and so each tortilla would come out fresh. And so, I remember the different layers of the meat, the fresh tomatoes, the cabbage or lettuce. And then I even thought about times where my mom would literally make her own chuck round hamburger patties, and I remember her using a big skillet and then her toasting the buns, and I could smell the different smells of the food. And I say that it food for me, it all of my memories are connected to food.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see how it intersects in our lives, but then also the places it can take us to.
Exactly. And I think it's very interesting too with how, even though we have these biases, like Italian food is like pasta, pizza, but within those areas, and depending on who makes it, it has a different flavor into it, different taste into it. And then what a lot of people around me like to say, it's like, whenever I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is so good, like they say, oh yeah, it's made from love. But I think sometimes I'm just like, yeah, you're right, like haha, like just brushing it off. But at the same time, you can see it is actually made from love, depending on who makes it and how they're making it for you, you can actually taste it. So it's really an raw experience that you truly can't see that from, and then you can actually feel it, but it's so hard to explain it in a sense. So I think, like you said, food is in any source of memory, and it's in our core. Like that's our way of connecting with one another's, and that's our way of having memories with them. So
for sure.
Very beautiful.
With that being said, what's your favorite type of food, or what would you consider your favorites, whether it be food or cuisine?
Ooh, okay. So I gotta be like straight from my roots. Just because like whenever I come back home from the trip, or like, although it's amazing, I just came back from Mexico, right? And then we had authentic Mexican food over there. It was so great. We had like 3 days worth of like meat, tacos, ceviche, and all that, like amazing food over there. But when I come back home, my comfort food is always Japanese food. Like it always comes back to Japanese food, and it's very simple too. It's like a typical authentic like yoshoku in a sense, where it's just rice, miso soup, either furikake or seaweed nori on side, and then main source of protein, which sometimes I just rely on salmon because I love salmon a lot. So sometimes it's miso salmon, teriyaki salmon, or like cooked salmon, just regular. And that just brings me back home. So that's my favorite cuisine in a way. Even though like I like all different types of food, it still goes back to Japanese food.
I want to second that as well, because I remember the last time I left home, and I needed my rice, I needed my furikake,
yes,
I needed my miso, I needed my tempura, like, because it's just something, nothing compares to being home.
Yes.
And yeah, that totally resonates with me. Tell us a little bit about your major and why did you decide to go into communications?
So it's a very interesting story. I think I started off being like, okay, I'm gonna go as a nursing major because everyone is around me, like local girls over here, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna be nurses. And then in high school too, I was in a HOSA, which is a health academy. So I was like getting CPR certified, teaching kids about like health issues, and then was interning at JABSOM to learn more about like brain injuries and all that kind of stuff. So the whole time I was like, okay, I'm going to go into the health industry, trying to go nursing. And then I was like, okay, this is too much. And I don't want to be taking care of people in that way. And that's when I was like, okay, then what do I like most? And I was like, okay, I like going to the beach and just dealing with marine life. So then I went to marine biology. But then turns out I was like, okay, I'm really terrible at science, STEM in general. So I was in like that real, like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life kind of moment. Just a little starstruck moment. And then I was talking to one of my friends. We were just sitting at the beach too, watching the sunset. And he asked me, he was like, okay, what are you good in life? And what do you like? So I just told him, I was like, I like communicating with people. That's my way of getting to know one another's. And then I think that's my strength. I've been dealing with it my whole life, like as a social work purposes, or like even volunteering. Everything deals with communicating. And I think I'm really strong suited at it. And my other thing I like to do is music. So, and then he's like, okay, then combine those two together. And then boom, that's your career. And then I was like, that gave me a all moment. I was just like, oh, that is so true. So it was like a weird sense of realization about like, that made me want to realize I want to go into the music industry and do management for events and stuff. That's what I always wanted to do. And even though my course changed a little bit, it's still a similar point. And that all led to communication. And that's how I met you in a sense too, because I was like, negotiation, you can use that in any source of life. And that's part of communicating too with other people. So in that sense, it made me learn a lot of things, from technical way to computers, like all that technicality, to dealing with people. So it's a lot of like psychological parts that goes within communication, but also embracing like that intercultural sense too. So I think that's how I found my major, and I'm really happy with what I am learning right now.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Hands down. If you're just joining us right now, we're speaking with Tiffany. She is a communications major that graduates this year. We've been talking about all kinds of things about food. When we come back, we're going to talk about what her senior year has been like and what would she say to her freshman self. Keep it locked to KTUH, the only radio station that loves you. Aloha Noa, if you're just joining us right now, we're speaking with Tiffany. She's a communications major that graduates this semester, and we've been talking about her major, which is communications. What has your senior year been like, and what would you say to your freshman self?
All right, that's a question of reflection right there. So senior year has definitely been a very interesting experience. It's a lot of ups and downs where it's exciting, but also it reels it back into focusing with schoolwork and what you really want to do in the future. And it just made me realize a lot of the friendships part in a sense too, where I am very much of a people pleaser. I just hate to admit, I'll admit it, but this year has really shifted that mindset of knowing who your true friendships are, and then how you can value that, and then focus on that rather than just giving that energy to many different people that might not want that energy from you, or might take that energy from you and not giving it back in a sense. So it's a eye-awakening moment, and I think I would tell my freshman year to just not be afraid and do whatever you think is best. Like, listen to that true gut feeling, because that gut feeling is always right. And also be open-minded about it, and don't be afraid to do what you want to do. Because everyone has their own pathways. Everyone has their own realizations. And just, you can't compare yourself to other people, because they're not you and you're not them. So I think my freshman year was interesting because it was through COVID. My first 2 years was through COVID, and everything was online. So I think there were some losses, but there were also some benefits of realizing who I truly am. And then I shared that within my senior year, and I developed true friendships from that. So I think that's my senior year has been. It has been a roller coaster, but it's been a fun ride. And I'm kind of sad that, you're graduating, but also very excited to what I can do in the future as well.
Would you do anything differently?
Honestly, no. Because before this, before the whole COVID thing happened, my options was to go to California schools. That was dead set. I was either going to go to UCSD or UC Irvine and then just major over there, which I think I would have developed a completely different characteristic rather than just staying at home over here and just having more appreciation with our home, like Hawaii, in a sense, and being more engraved into a nature, because I feel more grounded, I feel more happier, and I think if I lived in that California hustle bustle life, I would have been a completely different person, and that's not the person who I wanted to be. So I don't think I would have changed it any differently than choosing over here.
I definitely understand what you mean by that hustle bustle life. I recently went to California.
Right.
And one of the observations that I made in the moment, and something that I said when I came back, I said, I understand how people lose themselves here.
Yes.
Because there's so much going on. Life is really coming at you so fast that it's almost like it's designed to make you forget who you are. And that for me was very perplexing because life is very different for us here.
Yes.
And I love that for us. And I can see, especially when people come here and they struggle, because they come here with the illusion of this is paradise, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then they're like, this is so slow. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's just right on time.
Exactly.
It's so interesting.
I especially hear that because I work in the tourism industry too for one of my jobs, and they're like, everyone is so slow here, slow paced, but still very happy. And I think those two tie together, just because we're in our own pace in life, that we appreciate more things. That's why we're more happier in a sense, rather than just being in that go, go, go sense, right? So a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, paradise, vacation. But they come to that realization where it's just it's very slow. But I think that's the beauty in it for Hawaii. And I don't think anyone or any state can top that in a sense. It might be bias in me, but that's just how I feel. Because it's very different when you go to New York, California. I even went to Seattle too, and that's so much different than over here. Nothing feels like that kind of relationship when you have that stranger, just uncle, auntie talking to you at the gas station.
That's so true.
Feels very homey, rather than just going to some mainland over there and talking to a stranger. It's so different. That pride of the Aloha community is so different, and I think nothing can top that.
I want to second that, because you hit that right on the money. Nothing tops that. And It's interesting because, after this, I'm going to go to the caf. And I talk to all the aunties in there, and
Yes.
I aloha them, and it's, yeah, nothing in all the places I've lived or I have visited, nothing compares to home.
Yes.
And on any level. If money was no option and you had the opportunity to try anything, what would it be?
Ooh. I think I would just travel. That's what I've always been wanting to do. And, like, I don't know. Ever since, like, that going back to our reason with studying abroad, it made me realize how there's so much to see in the world. And there's so much history, culture, and beauty with every single thing in life, rather than being on your computer 24/7, I mean, nothing's wrong with that. Getting your money, getting your grind in, that's also great too. But I also want to, like, just appreciate the world that we live in and then see what's out there, because once you see the different perceptions in life, then you get more open-minded, and I think you get more knowledgeable, and you start to understand the reality in life, but also the gratitude that you have in right now. Like, some people don't have that opportunities with you, but you have everything in the world. Like, you get to go to school, you live in Hawaii, you have beach, like, right there, walking 5 minutes if you could. Like, none of the people around can do that. Like, and I think I also learned that in Mexico too. We did a food tour, and we learned so much about the local community and how people take buses that is non-AC'd, but all the people come to work away from their hometown, like 1 hour, 2 hours away from home, and then they come to the touristy areas to work until like 7, 6, 8 at night, and then they have to go back busing home. That's how much of a different community it was over there, and how the governmental system is a little more, I would say, not so well developed, and how much a lot of people are struggling with that. Like, I heard from our local food tour guide, she was like, it gets hotter during the summertime and there's no AC within the buses. So some people pass out, some people die from it. Like, that's how much of an importance that we need in our communal, like, systems. And I totally agree from those. And then I wouldn't have known until I took that food tour or I traveled to Mexico. So seeing that image that you have within that country to compare to actually living in that kind of community and learning more about it gives you more of, like, the open perceptions. So what I would want to do is gain more insight and just learn more, and then spread that information to people. Because, for example, living in Hawaii, they're like, oh yeah, there's the Diamond Head, there's this, there's the Hanauma Bay, but no one knows the deep meaning of how all those things are there and the reasons why it's becoming like a number one tourism industries within those sites, even though they were, like, historically founded and they're more of the geographical parts that needs to be taken care of. So I think just traveling and having that insight would definitely gain more appreciation about what I have in life. So that's what I would do.
If you're just joining us right now, we're speaking with Tiffany. She's a graduate, or soon-to-be graduate, of the communications department. And we've been talking about developing and learning more as you became a senior, and also your experiences as a freshman. When we come back, we're going to talk about what the future holds and a little bit about Japan. Keep it locked to KTUH, the only radio station that loves you. Aloha no, if you're just joining us right now, we're speaking with Tiffany. She is a senior in the communications department, and we're talking about food. Let's flash forward to the future. What's next? You're going to graduate. You've told us that, entertainment management's your thing. What does the future hold for you?
So, honestly, to be straight up, I really don't know what's going to go in life, and I think that's okay. But right now my main focus is I'm applying for a teaching job in Spain, so I could live there for a year and have that actual living lifestyle in Spain, because I really do miss it, and I think it's my way of trying to find myself, be more independent. And my main focus point now is to work in sports industry too. And then I love Formula 1. That's my thing. So I think having that kind of experience just by volunteering or getting to know more about that international relations that goes within that, I think would be very important. So that's my main focus, is just living in Spain for a year and then see how it goes afterwards. Yeah.
Girl, you can tell me about that, because I might need to look into that myself at this point, because I'm like, what?
Please come.
Tell us about what dishes from Japan do you miss versus Hawaii?
Ooh. See, not the funny thing, but it's a great thing about living in Hawaii is that you get to taste a little bit of everything. And Japanese food is one of the primaries in Hawaii as well too, so you don't really miss as much. But I do miss the convenience store foods, the very simple ones. So every time I go back home, at the airport there's 7-Eleven that is open 24 hours, so I go there every time, and then I order a rice bowl. And they do their food so well, so calculated, which is always the best. And then I get a cup noodle, and I also get some protein, which is maybe fried chicken or something. So I think that's what I miss the most, is having that excitement from 7-Eleven, of trying whatever food from there. But I also miss my grandma's food too. It's nothing specific food that I miss, but it's just that home cooked grandma food, where she makes her own way of pickled radish, or some little dishes on the side that you eat with rice, So those are what I miss the most, I think. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with someone from the past, who would it be and why?
I think it's the host mom. Yeah. I want to see her one last time. I want to although I got to know her very much so within that couple months, I just want to appreciate the things that she did for me. And for my mom as well too, because when my mom traveled to Spain to see me, she offered the place to stay for her to sleep for a couple days, because we couldn't find a hotel close to our place. And my host mom, open arms, brought a location for my mom to sleep in and have that authentic type of food from her, which was so nice. And just tell her how much I've gone through afterwards within this 2 years, and I still think about her to this day. So I just want to talk to her and see how much of an impact she made for me while I was in Spain. So yeah.
What is so interesting for me from this talk story is I mean, I only know you from class. I never would have known this in that class about you. Like, and I mahalo you so much for your willingness to be so open about this. And yeah, I mahalo you so much for this because, even when I approached you about doing this talk story, I didn't know how it was going to land. I didn't know if it would be something you'd be into. And, you know, in hindsight, like, I'm so grateful that we did have this talk story. And again, big shout out to Kumu Zephany because, I mean, you've been so impactful, at least for me.
Yes.
That book, Getting to Yes, definitely has given me a template of how to better communicate with myself.
I mean, you gave it to all your workers as well, too.
For sure. Because, I mean, I really believe, like, I say this, you know, as someone who lost both of my parents. If I would have had this book when that happened, I think it would have allowed me the opportunity to better develop my communication skills. Because I was basically, I had to rush to grow up. Right. And so in hindsight, like, that book gave me verbiage that I already had, but it helped me refine it. And it helped me be able to navigate even more complex conversations. And so, yeah, no, I'm incredibly grateful for that class, but definitely very grateful for even this experience. Because, again, it never had come up in class. We never really talked about it. Yeah. And it just organically, you know, has come about. And it's so amazing to now, like, when I hear about this dish again, it has imprinted on me in such a very different way that it never would have been able to be possible if it wouldn't have been for this particular talk story. So I aloha you so much for that. Is there anything else that you maybe would want to share with folks?
I mean, I feel like I said so much, maybe oversaid some things, which I hope you guys are okay with that. But I think one big lesson learned for everyone is just being an open-minded person, you know? Because even if I wouldn't say yes to this, I wouldn't have known much about you. Or we wouldn't have cooked together. And I think that's what my mom has told me, engraved into my brain, is just to be open-minded, right? And because you never know what to expect. And sometimes it can be a beauty, sometimes it can be a learning lesson, right? Even though it can be a negative thing. And I think what this has also taught me to self-reflect and just seeing how much I've gone through within my 4 years of college life. So I think a lot of people should have more self-reflection, in a sense, of like how we talked about it, you know, about how we read that book and then through that class, and then we reflect so much of how we need to develop ourselves. So, but not to pressurize yourself in a sense where you're like criticizing, but in a sense of a learning development. And that leads to open-mindedness. So I think that's just one thing I want to put it out there. Yeah.
You've been listening to Real Talk with DJ Ono. Aloha.